Hey everyone, I am doing a zipper today. So I'm not sure if everyone was able to buy like a 4-inch zipper. I was not. I bought a bunch of these and they're quite a bit longer. Um, but there is a way to shorten it, so that's what I want to show you. So I want like a 4 or 5-inch zipper. So I'm going to measure down to about 4 inches. And then take needle and thread, and we'll just be shortening this little zipper up. Here's my needle. So here I have double thickness thread. So bring your two ends down together here, tie yourself a really good knot. And basically what you have to do is recreate the stopper that is at the end of a zipper. So if you look at the zipper at the end here, it has this metal stopper, so it doesn't allow the zipper to zip beyond there, stops it. So we are going to recreate that at our 4-inch mark. So I'm going to measure down again to 4 inches, give myself a little mark with a pencil, and then just take your needle and thread, and as long as you're blocking those stitches there, it won't be able to unzip past that point, and we'll be able to cut it, make it shorter. I mean, we've all gotten some piece of clothing stuck in some type of zipper before, and you know, just the smallest bit of fabric kind of hangs up your zipper from pulling. So that's all we need to do, is basically make this stop when it gets down to the bottom here. Use some nice bright colored thread. All right, so I did several stitches. Again, my thread is double thickness, so it's going to be extra strong. I'm going to tie myself a little knot. I did one little stitch right on through there, and then I'm kind of coming through that little loop that it has. That should be a pretty good knot. I'll take my thread to the back side of the zipper and just cut that there. Sorry, bumped the camera. All right, so now we have that. Now I just need to actually make it shorter. So I don't like to use my Good Ginger scissors for this, even though these are nylon teeth on the zipper, and you can totally cut them. I just like to use a pair of old paper scissors and just kind of walk your way slowly across there, and then you can just cut that off. That was not a very straight cut, but that's okay. And leave yourself, you can see I left myself probably about a ½ inch longer than where the stopper is, so leave yourself a little end. Similar to what they did here, they have a little bit longer than that, but at least a ½ inch would be good. All right, this becomes useless. Whoop, you usually can just pull it open and never have it close again. So that's going in the garbage. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step. I'm going to end up doing that to both my zippers. So I'm going to cut this one down also to 4 inches. I just will do that off camera. And I'll go ahead and install this one. So there are two zipper installations typically with a standard zipper. There is what's called a lap zipper and a centered zipper, centered seam zipper. We are going to first, I think I'll start first with the lap zipper. So where your zipper goes in on your fabric is going to be basted close. So you have to kind of close it before you actually end up opening it. And it's just to help you install that zipper more precisely. And I've noticed pattern directions lately have gotten away from this traditional way of putting in a lap zipper, and they're doing this press method instead. And I am not a fan of it. I can do it because I've done a bazillion zippers and I've watched those directions and I know what to look for. But I think when you're starting out, I really recommend that you do this method. So just like with all our directions that we've had, just because the pattern says, you know, to do your narrow hem one way or the other doesn't mean you can't like use this technique that we've learned in class. Same with dart installations and seam finishes and so forth. So when it comes to a lap zipper, a lot of you are going to have that on your pattern. I would just say if you're going to do it this way. It's just a little more foolproof than the other. Okay, so your pattern, if this was your garment, this would be the upper portion of where your zipper is going to go in, and everything below would be stitched closed as in your normal stitch. And then they would have usually a dot, so I just did that with a pencil mark. And my dot is going to represent like the bottom of the zipper, like where the stitching I just did is. So there's where my dot is. And then your typical stitch would be, you know, stitch from your bottom area. Flip these over. So we're just going to do our normal stitch on a 5/8 seam allowance. I will tell you one thing with these lap zippers, you cannot cheat and put these in like a 1/2 inch seam allowance or anything smaller than 5/8. There's just not enough room. So you definitely need that 5/8. I've had students learn this for the first time, and they've kind of, I've told them to just go ahead and cheat and give yourself a really generous 5/8 seam allowance, like scooch towards the 3/4. And then once you understand the process, then you'll see why I had you do that. Okay, so I just did a normal 2.5 stitch length stitch up to that dot. And then I'm going to change and go to my base stitch. So change over to your base, and same thing, guiding, making sure your edges stay even. Any of this is just a hair off, it'll affect how that zipper and the room that you have to put that zipper in. So again, good, generous. And I'm going to do one tiny little back stitch back here. So much for one. I forgot my machine does it automatically. So I did do a back stitch because I don't want it to fall out. Sometimes those stitches start giving away a little earlier than we want. Go back and cut these threads. Okay, so at this point, you are going to open up your fabric. I'm just going to do a gentle little finger press right along this. My fabric is really raveling. It would definitely be a good thing to go ahead and throw some seam finish in here and zigzag these edges to stop that, but I'm not going to worry about it at this point. I don't want to bore you that much. All right, so a little finger press. All right, first step, you are going to take just the right seam allowance. So this is where the basting is, right? Stitching is down below. This would be up like the waistband of your skirt. This would be down at the hem at the bottom down here. So you're going to take one seam allowance. So push everything over to the left here. So that's your 2 layers of fabric and one of the seam allowances. All right. Make sure you're right on that seam. And then we have to line our zipper up. And how you do it is you're going to unzip your zipper. Again, it should stop at your little stopper. You're going to put it face down. This is kind of back to the right sides together. If you forget to do right face down, your zipper will be on the wrong side of your garment. You'll be having to reach in. So the zipper pull is down against the fabric. We're going to go ahead and leave this tab that's above the little metal stopper at the top lined up with the top edge of our fabric. This again would be where your waistband or your facing is going to be stitched in. So you need to make sure that there's at least 5/8 of an inch up here. Don't have that way up to top because all of a sudden you'll have your zipper going beyond where you need it to. So this will all get finished later. So you take the teeth of the zipper and you push them right up against that seam, right where it's stitched, and you kind of feel it just kind of bump right into that seam and find its little way to hold right there. Go ahead and put a couple pins in. I will tell you at the bottom here, it definitely wants to move around a lot, so keep an eye that it's staying there. This shifts a little bit. It makes it very awkward on the next step. All right, all you guys that have new machines, you're going to have to get your manual out and find out what your zipper foot looks like. They vary. Sometimes they're little guys like that, kind of a wide bunt nose. Sometimes they're just a single real skinny little foot that would be about half this size. That is my personal favorite, and I always swore I would never buy a sewing machine that had this kind of presser foot, but you know, my splurge one day didn't process all the things I wanted to have on my machine. All right, so what this one has on my machine is I can put the shank, this is your shank, over to the right or to the left. So you want to place it on your machine according to where you are going to want to sew. So I'm going to want to sew very close or fairly close to these teeth. So I don't want this whole foot cruising down the big metal chunk right here of the zipper. I need it to stay to the right, so I need my needle on the left side. So that means I'm going to put the shank on like so. All right, and then we've kind of learned how to move our needle around. It's not as important on this step, but we are going to need to do that at some point. And then this first step, I'm just going to be stitching right down kind of the center of this tape. This is just the zipper tape, making sure again that the teeth are lined up right with that seam. So hopefully you can see that in there. I know the glare is getting bad with my, if I keep blocking that, hopefully that helps. So I'll flip that out of the way again and get my hand out of the way and block the thing. But you can see right there is the seam, and then the teeth are going to bump right up to it. So I'm going to just baste this in all the way down, and you can see when you get down here, this big fat foot is going to hit that guy and bounce out kind of funny. So to prevent that, I'm going to go ahead and move my needle over to the kind of the furthest it can go to the left, so that it's running right along the edge here of this foot. All right, and I'm still just in baste. Basting is fine. This is kind of what it's going to do. The only bummer about baste is it takes such giant stitches that it kind of bumps around. All right, this again is where I see a lot of times people let this move over to the side or it gets a little this way. I'm staring right at the teeth and making sure they're staying right on that seam. And then that foot or that zipper pole gets in the way too, so watch that. Hopefully all your machines, if you have this kind of fat foot, you'll have that needle position adjustment. So just move your needle to get it over there, because if you don't do that, it's just, this is just too much thickness and it makes you bump around real weird around here. Definitely when you come near that. All right, so that is kind of positioned our zipper over the seam. So it's right down the center. You are now going to zip it closed. Fold it just over one fold like so. All right. I actually did a boo-boo. So rather than starting over, I'm going to let you live and learn with me. I let that be too big away. So this stitch I did, the baste, needed to be tighter to the fabric. So I'm going to go back over. And actually it's not even that horrible of a thing just to do it this way. Go ahead and get out of your baste. Go back down to your normal stitch. And this time I'm going to go ahead and stitch fairly tight. I want to run just to the right of where this little metal piece is here. So I'm going to have my stitch be just to the left of my base that I put in there. So the base is kind of nice. It's there holding. Instead of pins, pins don't always hold as good as a baste. But this time it's going to be an actual stitch. So turn off a baste, go back to your 2.5, reverse, and stay tight. Now don't hit that metal because your needle will break. But I can just feel like the foot is running right against this little lip. There's a little like ridge right where the teeth, the zipper teeth are. I'm running right next to those. Now when I get down here, I got that big zipper pole. He's kind of in my way. I do have a little trick for that too. If I put my needle down and lift up my presser foot, I can actually zip this closed. And it gets that zipper pole out of the way. And then I can keep that same line all the way down there. All right. Now I like that better. If you learn to put zippers in, even if it's 2 or 3, 4 steps, whatever it takes, I just think it's a more accurate method just to have your own process down. Okay, so there is my baste. There is my actual stitch. It's fairly tight to where the zipper teeth are. Now I'm going to fold this over like so, and you create this little, I don't know what you call that, little sleeve of fabric right along this edge. So here's our seam. There's a little chunk of fabric about 1/4 of an inch, and then those are your zipper teeth, right? You're going to kind of pull against this zipper from the fabric. It's pulling against this stitch that we just put in. So you like fold back on that stitch, pull like so. And we are going to be stitching, hold this back up so you can see it, right down the center of that. So in between where the zipper is attached to the fabric and the seam that is the actual center seam to the fabric. We're going to stitch right down that center right there. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I know the camera. And I can see from this, I have my presser foot in the wrong side because I would have to run over